Okay. Kiki, do you want to close the door? I think we're all here.
The gang's all here.
Yes, all aboard that's going aboard, says Edith. Okay, so John was admiring, I assume that was admiration. You're admiring this?
Yeah.
Little clip here? Yes. So just, if there's anything you see, I can't say this enough. If anybody wants me to send them the link to anything that I'm showing you, I would be more than happy to do that. So yeah, I just looked that up on the internet. Like I do everything. Okay, it's my best friend. All right, so today we are going to be talking about Blackbeard. Remember, we just didn't get to that last week. So we're going to be talking about Blackbeard and also the female pirates. We're going to talk about two of the most notorious female pirates. But before we do that, we just have to remind you all of what we talked about last week, right? Because you seem to want me to do that. And I'm happy to do it. Last week, what was the main theme? Does anybody remember? It was a long time ago. Last Wednesday was a long time ago. Excellent, Edith. We talked about Port Royal.
Yes.
Oh, now I remember. Yes, Port Royal. And that was the, remember the Sodom and Gomorrah of its day. It was called Sin City. It was in Jamaica. It was a pirate haven. And we also had to clear up the distinction between pirates and what was the other name?
Buccaneers.
Buccaneers, exactly. So there could be pirates and buccaneers. And do you remember what's the difference?
One's at Blackbeard, one's at Tampa.
Oh, Bill, what did you just say? One's from Tampa?
I said one's at Pittsburgh and one's at Tampa.
One's You know,
Good one.
What did he say?
and something, I'm so intent when I'm doing these, because I just have a week to get this all pulled together, right? And I'm so intent on it that when I was doing Pirates and Buccaneers and I was looking up graphics for it, and then I saw these teams come up, I was shocked. I'm like, what's this? That's not at all what I'm looking for. And then I realized, oh, right, yeah. So I appreciate that comment. But Edith, you were saying the difference is
The Buccaneers have a contract.
So everybody, the difference between a pirate and a buccaneer is that the pirate really thought of themselves as privateers, right?
Yeah.
They had a license to go do this thieving. The buccaneers did not have the letter of marque. They were not privateers. Remember, those were the people that were...
I thought it was the reverse of that.
I thought it was your reverse. I thought the
No, the pirates are the ones that thought of themselves as privateers, and the buccaneers were the people on the shore that were roasting the pork.
Oh, yeah.
That's who they are. They were roasting pork, selling the meat to the ship crews as they came into port, and they realized that they're not making too much money at that. They would make a lot more money. Yes, Conrad?
Boucan in French means smoke, so that's smokers is what this translates.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Conrad is exactly right. We looked at that last week. So buccaneer is from the French word, and it comes from the word smoke, smokers. So they're the smokers. They were smoking meat, and they just joined up, but they weren't associated with any country or government. They were just joining to make some loot.
So could you say that all privateers are pirates, but all pirates are not privateers?
Yeah.
We can say whatever we want because
Don't get technical, Judy.
we live at Hunt Community, and it's all about you. And whatever you want to say, you can say. All right, so now who were these Buccaneers? Do you remember? They were runaway slaves because in Jamaica, we had slave trade. What was the commodity there?
Sugar.
Sugar cane, that's exactly right. So we had runaway slaves. It was going to be a lot better for them to work on a pirate ship than to be a slave. We had sailors, and we took a look at that. Remember, what was it like for sailors?
Horrible job.
They were AOL.
Yeah.
They were AOL sailors, yeah, and they were very often not. They didn't enlist. Let's say they were captured, and they were shanghaied. I like that. Yes. And on the ship, they had very bad pay, poor conditions, very bad food, health issues, and there was severe punishment. Severe punishment. Does anybody remember some of those punishments?
Hanging.
They got flogged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They walked the plank.
They were, and remember they were, yes, they were dunked into the,
Yeah.
yes, and dragged under the ship. Oh, it's terrible,
Yeah.
terrible. So, does it make sense for sailors to defect
Yeah.
and become pirates? And then also, there were merchants, because the merchants saw that when the pirates came into port, they were spending all their cash, so they're double dipping.
Yeah.
They're double dipping. They want to go out, make some money, and then they know when they come back in, they'll just go to their tavern or whatever
And drink it all up.
establishment. You know what I'm trying not to say. Whatever their establishment was, and they would get the money, other people's money in addition to their own money as well. And why is it so appealing, more appealing than becoming, a sailor for the Royal Navy? Well, because on a pirate ship, there is punishment, right?
Yeah.
But it's a democracy, and you have to vote. It's majority rule. So if somebody starts, speaking against the captain, and it seems like there's going to be a mutiny, it has to be put to a vote. All right? The captain can't just decide, although I'm going to contradict myself in a few minutes here. But typically, it has to be put to a vote. And before you ever go out, what do you have?
Pirates Code.
Yeah.
Articles of Agreement.
Yeah, articles of agreement, so you know exactly what to expect. And you agree to it, and you deem this fair, and then you can go out onto the ship and go pirating. And we all, as pirates, have to live by what?
The code.
The Pirates Code. So we talked about that last week too, and those conditions. We also know that this was a great brotherhood, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was this is a sacred oath that they take, and they call themselves the Brethren of the Coast. Yes. So Port Royal was the epicenter of trade, and you could get anything from anywhere all over the world at Port Royal. All right, because they're stealing it from merchant ships and they're bringing it to Port Royal, and then it's getting sent out from there. So it's a very wealthy and well-populated place. We were very, very interested in the drinking habits of pirates. For some reason, I've decided not to dwell on that, but so we know that the favorite drink is Kill Devil rum. Remember that?
Yes.
And back in those days, there was a secret ingredient.
Gunpowder.
Oh, you all see, no one had a problem remembering that. That stood out. Yeah, they put a little gunpowder. Now this little tradition is 100 years in the making. They'd been doing it. Sailors had been putting a little gunpowder in their rum for 100 years. And I tried to get a little bit more information on that, but it's still the same thing. They thought it made them more virile. So that's why, I don't know why they did it other than that. We also last week took a look at Captain Morgan, speaking of rum.
Yeah.
So you all knew Captain Morgan the rum,
Spicy.
but not everybody knew Captain Morgan the actual person. And he was very famous because he, in the most unbelievable way, took Panama City from the Spanish. Yes, do you remember that story? Yeah, he lost most of his men. They were so starving they had to boil their leather straps, and they had to eat that. And yet, despite all of that, they were able to take this Spanish stronghold. But when he got to England with the wealth from that, what had happened? Does anybody remember?
They made a treaty. England and Spain made a treaty.
Yeah, they had signed a treaty. England and Spain had signed a treaty. So now he was the poor guy, and so now he's a hero and simultaneously an outlaw. So they had to do something with him. Do you remember what did they do? What did they do to fix the situation? No, they
I didn't even send him off
they-
to rule, and I forget where.
Port Royal.
Royal.
Excellent, Rita. Yes,
That's right.
absolutely excellent. Yes, they sent him away to Port Royal. So yeah, so it really was not. It was not a punishment. And then he died there. Well, after that, the city itself was about to expire. Who remembers what happened?
The tsunami.
Yes, there was an earthquake first, and I looked it up. It was 7.7.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was a very, very severe. And then we had the tidal wave. You're right. Then the tidal wave came in, and the whole entire the whole shoreline sunk right under the ocean. And we took a little bit of a look at that. But I also wanted to give you this documentary. And I don't know if anyone had a chance yet to take a look at it, but it was really great. And it showed a lot of the artifacts. We took a look at some of them last week, but it will show you more than what I was able to share with you last week. It's really quite good, so I recommend it. So now we're all caught up. We're going to be moving on, but I want to take just one quick moment to say, as we've been spending these past 2 weeks on piracy, has it surprised you how much piracy had a direct impact on world history?
Yeah. Yes.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because remember, it begins in the 14th century BC, right? It had an impact on the Roman Republic, right? It had an impact on, I'm going to show you something that I've been showing you. So in this series, I've been showing you this painting of Queen Elizabeth, as you probably recall. But I did it kind of zoomed in. So we just saw Queen Elizabeth. This is the full portrait. Now what do you see here?
Ships.
Ships. And over here? War. And this is in direct reference to the Spanish Armada. Yes, exactly. And you know, England had a little bit of luck on their side with that particular thing, but that was a huge turning point in the history of England. It was enormous. It can't be understated. Now, what does Elizabeth have her hand on here?
Globe.
Yeah, so what is this suggesting?
The world is hers. The world is round.
And before the privateers, before Drake, who really set this off,
You're right.
before
But you're right.
Yep, before Drake, England was struggling. England wasn't big,
No.
not big at all, and it was struggling. And remember, Henry VIII had left the country in very poor financial condition, and it was piracy. It was piracy that that changed everything for England. And now you have the Queen, who has proudly overcome the great, wealthy Spanish attack on them, and she has her hand on the world. And from this, what happens to England?
She comes a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They took over
So
a lot of
doesn't-
countries.
What, Pat?
They took over a lot of countries.
They start colonizing.
They
Yeah.
certainly did.
Became a powerhouse.
Yes, they became a powerhouse, Effie, exactly. A huge, huge world-dominating empire. And it comes from what?
Piracy.
Yes. It has its roots in piracy. It's fascinating. It's just absolutely fascinating. But from this point forward, as we're starting to talk today, the thinking about piracy, especially in the British Empire, it starts to change. Okay, so now, pun intended, the tide is turning. The tide is definitely turning. All right, and we're going to see how that plays out in the story of Blackbeard. We're going to start with Blackbeard. I also have to tell you that the three people that we're going to be discussing today, the resource largely comes from one place. From here is called The General History of Pirates.
And murderers.
Oh yes, and robberies and murderers and yes. All right.
Just an incidental item.
Yeah, just some, you know, a little sidebar, murderers, robberies. So a general history of pirates, all right? And when I tried to get other resources, separate resources, I want to have 3 resources for the things I put up here. So I'm searching and searching, and the other resources I got referenced this.
Yes.
So it all kept coming back to this. So I want to tell you that up front. The stories I'm telling you today are primarily from this one resource. And it's unusual that we would be using one resource. And the other interesting thing about it is the author is this gentleman here, Captain Charles Johnson. Well, the reason why it's curious is because there is no record of a Captain Charles Johnson. All right, so now speculation.
Who really wrote it?
Who really wrote it? So, you know, everybody assumes that that's a pen name. And was this written by a pirate?
When was
It says
when
it's a
was
genuine
written?
account.
What's the date of this, do you know?
It says it's a genuine account?
Yes, it's a genuine account of the voyages and plunders.
Yes.
And plunderers.
So
Yes.
when was it written?
It was written at the time, within the time.
Contemporary.
A contemporary. This is a contemporary. Excellent question. Yes, good question. So it's a contemporary. Yes, I'm sure that the author would put it. It's a genuine account of it. Yes, but we don't know who it is. There is no record of a Captain Charles Johnson. So it could be. So you let your imagination run wild, right? It could be any one of the famous pirates that we hear tell about. We'll see. Maybe we could read through it and see which one he favors the most.
Was it published in Edinburgh?
Yes.
It was published in Edinburgh. Okay, so he is our main source for finding out about this scary dude. Ooh, that was like the creepiest I could find, because if you read the description,
Yeah.
if you read the description of him, he was just like a scary, scary guy.
He's a yucky man.
He was a yucky man, is that what you said? That's very harsh. That's very hard, Effie. Okay, so what do we know about him? We don't know too much. He was born in Bristol, England. We don't know an awful lot about his childhood, but we do know what his real name is. Of course, his mom didn't name him Blackbeard.
Not.
Yeah, no, that's not his name. His name is Edward Teach. Yes. So he grows up in a sea town, a shore town, and so he's probably heard lots of great stories about out on the open seas and Drake and Raleigh and all of that. He's growing up hearing that. We don't know about that. We're just assuming. We do know that he joined the Royal Navy, and he joined it at the time of what's called Queen Anne's War, and he fought against the French. But when the war was over and his duty was done, what was his choice? What were his options for a young man? He could join the Royal Navy, but given what we know about it now, do you think that that was something he would be likely to do?
No.
No, that was not anything that would have a draw for a young man at all. So, what's left to him?
Piracy.
Piracy. Piracy, why not? So he becomes a pirate, and he joins a pirate ship with a captain so he can, cut his teeth on that a little bit. And while he's out doing this on a ship, they take a French slave ship. It's called the Concord. It's called the Concord. Here is a model of it from a museum, all right? And he says to his captain, instead of, my cut of the treasure, I would really love to have this ship. Usually they leave the ship. They want to bring everything into their smaller ship. They don't want a big ship. This is not good for pirating. A big ship isn't good. It's not, you can't sneak up on stuff. You can't go fish. You can't hide places. So normally they don't want that, but Edward Teach did. He wanted this ship. And so it was given to him because there was really no other use for it. Here's another side of it. All right? And so he mans this ship, goes out on his own, and he renames it. Does anyone know what he renamed it?
The Queen Anne.
Queen Anne's Revenge.
Yes.
All right, so now it's called Queen Anne's Revenge. And I have a little bit of I have a little clip that explains a little bit more about that for you. So we'll go on and we'll come back to Queen Anne's Revenge. But what does Johnson tell us about Blackbeard? Oh, that's very creepy. I did a good job on this. All right, so Captain Teach, all right, he got the name Blackbeard because he grew his beard really, really, really long, and in some places it said it went up to his eyes. I don't know if this is true or not, it could be exaggeration, but the hair went up to his eyes and it went down to his knees, and then he braided his beard and tied the braids with black bows. Yes, yep. And what?
It's the image that was used in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
So it would be, was he looking for like an octopus kind of a, yes, exactly. All right, and so Johnson goes on to say,
He wore a sleeve over his shoulder.
yes, but the best part about this is, oh, here it is. He stuck lit matches under his hat so that it would appear, he's this very intimidating figure, but now he's got smoke billowing out from either side of his head. So he's done everything he can do to make himself as intimidating and as frightening as he possibly can. And he's crazy. The guy is crazy. He's got a crazy reputation, all right? In 1711, he's just started his pirating career, and he comes across the HMS Scarborough. It's a naval fleet. And what does he decide to do?
He's gonna take her.
Other pirates would get out of there, right? They would turn around, and it's the Navy, for goodness sake. But what does he do?
He fires on them.
He fires on them, he takes them on, and guess what?
He wins.
He wins! He has got bragging rights that will never, never die down. And all of the other pirates and everybody else, all the merchant ships, all the trades, everybody is becoming more and more afraid of him because his reputation is developing. He's this crazy guy, and he's taken on the Navy, and he won. And then there's this story. Here's where I'm going to contradict what I just said a little while ago. The story is that he's below deck one night, and he's playing cards with his crew, and he just takes a pistol out, and from under the table he shoots the guy he's playing cards with.
He did what?
Yes, he shoots him. He shoots him, and then somebody said, "What did you do that for?" And he said, "Well, if I don't kill one once in a while, they'll forget who I am."
Oh my God.
So he just did it to just, make sure that they would be staying in line. So I know they were supposed to take a vote, but he made a little faux pas and just went right ahead and killed one of his guys. The guy's name was Hand, H-A-N-D, Hand. Was the man that he just killed for no reason at all. He's also reported to have had 14 wives.
Wow.
14 wives. Now what he does, though, is he goes ashore and hooks up with somebody, brings them back to the ship, because there are no laws really out on sea, and he would have somebody marry them. And then, he takes off and he doesn't take the wife with him. All right. He has a wife in every port. So he is thought to have had, it is reported that he had 14 wives, and that is exactly the way he did it. None of them illegal. He just would bring them on board. Somebody on board would marry them, and there you are. You're sanctioned for the evening, I guess. Okay, so sounds like a swell guy, right?
Yeah.
He is the terror of the seas. He's the absolute terror of the seas. But something really, really eerily creepy happened in 1718. And what happened was the notorious Blackbeard the pirate was not seen or heard from. There were no reports about him, not for months. Where did he go? What was he doing? What was he up to? There's no records. We have no idea. But we do know, and we have it well documented, when he reemerged a few months later, he reemerged in a direct connection to Boston, Massachusetts.
Really?
Really? So what is that connection? I say to all of us that live 20 minutes from Boston, Massachusetts.
20 minutes, what do you want, train?
On a Sunday morning. It's 20 minutes if you go on a Sunday morning. And you drive with me.
Okay.
Yeah. What would it take you, Pat?
An hour.
An hour to get to Boston? All right. So this is the Boston newsletter, and this whole article, you can blow it up, you can read the whole article, but what it's talking about, what it's reporting, is that they were very proud initially of the fact that this this trade ship out of Boston, it's called the Protestant Caesar. The Protestant Caesar is the name of the ship. And they were very proud of the fact that Blackbeard comes up on them. Now, typically what was happening was that if you surrendered, he wouldn't kill the crew. Like if you just gave up easily, he'd let you go. But if you fought, he'd be, it would be to the death. No quarter, that's what they called it, no quarter. Yes, no mercy, taking no hostages. Okay, so taking no prisoners, I should say. Okay, so they decided to fight, and guess what?
They won.
They won.
Whoa.
Yes, they won. They held off Blackbeard, and they held him off long enough, and they were able to get away. Well, what do you think Blackbeard's going to let that go?
No.
He can't. He's got this great reputation. He took on the Royal Navy. Do you think he's going to let the Protestant Caesar get away with this? No, he stalked them. So he stalked them and stalked them for days. And then he finally gets them in a vulnerable position. And what does he do?
That's the man.
Oh,
Destroyed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So the ship is gone, the crew is gone, the merchandise is gone. And you can, and you can read all about this. This is fully covered in the Boston newsletter. Yeah, from 1718.
Big ship too, wasn't it?
so it was a ship out of Boston?
Yes,
Not a
Okay.
yeah, a ship out of Boston. All right, so he's near Boston. He's going to travel not too far, and he winds up in South Carolina. Well, we're not sure what's going on here. Remember, he's been gone, he's been silent for a few months. He does this, this interlude with the Protestant Caesar, and then all of a sudden he shows up in South Carolina port, and he comes across a ship that's about to embark, and it has, the colonists on it. It has civilians on it. So he decides, all right, I'm gonna see what we've got here. So he goes on board, he takes over the ship, he wants to get everybody's wealth, but even more important than that, he discovers, is some very prominent citizens, residents of the city are on board, and they're about to sail out. And so now he's got some very valuable hostages with him. So he's got to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
So he sends a couple of his guys on one of the hostages, just on a little rowboat on shore to go to the governor and say, meet my demands or I will kill all of the hostages that I have. You have X number of days. What do you think his demands were? What would he be asking for?
Money.
Tobacco.
Tobacco, money, whatever you can get.
Well, it might surprise you to know that what he was requesting was 300 pounds of medicine.
What? Really?
Really, that's what happened. He needs 300 pounds of medicine. So then you start saying to yourself, well, he's got 14 wives. He's been gone for months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something's happening. Something's going on. Then he brings this whole city to its knees over 300 pounds of medicine. So we kind of want to keep that in our heads to maybe try to understand what he does from here. Okay? He's obviously not feeling well, or his crew's in trouble, or something's going on. Well, he gives them a certain number of days. He's got the hostages below deck. They're terrified. And the guys are not coming back with the medicine in the time frame that he gave them. It isn't happening. They're not coming. He's starting to get really angry. And one of the hostages, one of the men from the city, talks him into just wait, just hold on, just hold on. I know the governor will want to get you this. It's not a lot to ask for. Just hang in there. Something must have happened. Just hang on. So he does. And that in itself is kind of remarkable that anybody would be able to talk Blackbeard into waiting. But it was good that he did, because they do come, they do manage to get themselves there with the 300 pounds of medicine. And the reason for the delay, the crew members were visiting the local taverns.
Hey, that's important, getting the same disease.
The two guys were dragging the hostage, because they've got a hostage with them.
Oh, jeez.
And they're they just have to check out the local taverns and find out, how they are. All right, so this is humiliating for South Carolina, right? It's humiliating. All right, Blackbeard the pirate is asking for medicine, and he's terrorizing. Actually, he said too, and if I don't get it at this time, not only is he going to kill the hostages, but he's going to come ashore.
Yeah.
And everybody was just terrified. And so for days, they're just buckled under this threat. So the governor of South Carolina is furious. He's had it. He needs to do something about it. But right here in North Carolina, it's a little different. It's a little different. So let's talk about that. South Carolina wants to get him. All right, South Carolina is wanting to come after him. They're lowering the boom. So Blackbeard has to kind of peer down. All right, by now he's got 300 to 400 crew. He's got several ships, and he's got to peer down. So he goes to North Carolina. He takes his flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge, and he just runs it aground and he leaves it there. He leaves it there. All right? He's decided that with the heat coming down on him, maybe now is the time to take the king's pardon. You could have a pardon. The king was offering a pardon. Mm-hmm. Now England, all right, they've gotten everything they can get out of piracy, and now it's becoming a problem for them. It's a problem. They have the East India Company. They have treaties with different countries. Pirates are now annoying.
That's
So-
passé.
What?
Passé.
It's passé. Yes, thank you. So they need to do something about it. They're giving them pardons. No questions asked. You can accept the pardon. And so Blackbeard decides he's going to do it, and he's going to do it in North Carolina because the governor there, Charles Eden, is much friendlier to pirates. Why would he be friendlier to pirates? Yes, exactly. Yes, you're all right. You are all exactly right. He's on the take. He's on the take. Yes.
He's on the
So,
take?
what?
He's on the tape.
He's on the take?
He looks honorable.
Taking money.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, he does look like a very wholesome man. So,
Typical politician.
yeah, he looks, yes, he's very handsome, so they elected him. All right, so Blackbeard now accepts the pardon. He's living in North Carolina, all right? He gets married legitimately, all right? He has an actual wife now. He's visiting the taverns, the local taverns, and he's entertaining everybody, the whole neighborhood. He's got awesome stories. He's got these great, great stories. He's a local celebrity. He settles down. Do you want to see the house?
Yes.
This is where he lived.
Oh, my goodness.
This is Blackbeard's house that he lived in. What?
Wilmington?
No, in North Carolina.
Wilmington.
In Beaufort?
Beaufort, yes,
Oh,
yes.
oh.
I'm sorry, Mary, yes. All right, yeah, this is his home. Now, how long do you think a man like Blackbeard can stay domesticated?
About 2 years.
Okay.
It didn't take long at all for him to get really bored. And so he starts hanging out down here,
Oh, yes.
all right, Ocracoke Island. All right, now what would be there? There's ships there. How, hold on, let me just, oh my goodness gracious, I might have to
Move along.
move along, yeah. Thank you, John. So he starts hanging out there because there are ships there. There's ships there. All right, so he's down there, he's hanging out, and he's going to go out. Now remember, he's got a pardon, and part of the pardon condition is that you can no longer pirate, right? You can't be a pirate anymore. So he happens to go out on one of the ships, and the weirdest thing happened. They came across this abandoned ship that was loaded
Sugar?
with sugar.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but there was nobody on board, but all the merchandise was on board. So they had to, they didn't want to waste all that good sugar, so they brought the ship in to North Carolina, and the Governor Eden, accepted that story. He thought that was a fine explanation. Yes, he had no problem with that. But what do you think South Carolina and Virginia felt about that? Did they believe that?
No.
No, they did not believe that at all. All right, so now he has violated the pardon, and what they've decided to do is that they're going to get the British Royal Navy. Remember, what did he do to the British Royal Navy? Did he embarrass the British Royal Navy?
Yes.
He did. All right, so now we've got a lieutenant that is in charge of going after him. In the meantime, Blackbeard doesn't appear to be aware of this coming down on him. He's back on the island, and he's having a pirate party. He's like literally having a pirate party, having a great time. And you know how it is when you have a really good party, word gets out and more people come. So this is turning into quite a party, and the neighboring fishermen start to complain. They're getting scared. They're thinking this is going to turn into another Port Royal. So they're reporting it, and then that was all that this Lieutenant Maynard needed, was that complaint, and so he goes after Blackbeard. Now Blackbeard has another ship. This one's called the Adventurer, and he's had this huge beach party, right? And most everybody is passed out from being drunk.
Yeah.
He's got about 20 guys. He's got about 20 guys on the ship with him. He goes to the ship because he hears that this guy is coming for him. And so this is a Navy coming after him. It's him and 20 guys. Do you think he should escape?
He should.
Sure.
He did.
He stayed.
Yeah.
He stayed, and he's going to fight. Can you imagine the ego,
Yeah.
right? So he stayed, he's going to fight, and what do you think happened?
He died.
Maybe,
The Navy got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lieutenant Maynard got him, and yes.
Did they?
Effie, you're very fond of the cutting off of the head,
Yeah.
so that, thank you.
They did.
Yes, so that's what, that's what they did.
Yeah.
They
did.
cut his head off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a reward for him too, and you have to prove.
Yeah, when you have a head.
This is my receipt. Can I have my
They
money?
grabbed him by the curls.
How do you know that?
All right, so that is the notorious Blackbird. So,
Beard.
Blackbeard, why do I keep saying Blackbird?
I don't know.
Oh, no.
So how long do you think his career lasted? Everything, all these stories that I just told you happened in the span of, what do you think?
About 10 years.
10 years?
5 years.
5 years?
No, it's gotta be more than 5 years.
2 years?
2 years?
2
Oh
years.
my God.
3?
From the time he left the British
Maybe.
Navy to the time he died, 2 years. All of those things happened in 2 years.
So he was still a,
widow.
In a boatload of widows.
he was still a young man then.
Yep. All right, so I'm
We
gonna
still haven't heard about the women.
tell you about the women. I'm gonna go quickly. I had a,
Oh, sure.
yes, I'll go quickly through the women. All right, so guess who's at the beach party? There's somebody at the beach party that should spark our interest.
The women,
Yeah, we know.
No,
Captain Jack.
Captain Jack, Jack Rackham. He is known as Calico Jack.
Oh.
All right, Calico Jack. Have you heard of him?
No.
No?
No.
Well, because he wasn't really that famous. He was famous for a couple of things. He's called Calico because he wore Indian calico cloth, which was very bright and colorful. So he was a standout for that. And he also had one of the successful mutinies.
Oh.
Okay, he had a successful mutiny. He charmed the crew. Usually that didn't go too well. Usually died before you had a successful coup. But he did, and then he was captain of his own ship. But that's not why he's famous. He's famous because of his wife.
His wife.
His wife. His wife. His
Anne
wife
Bonny.
is
Yeah.
Anne Bonny. Anne Bonny, I'm going to go through her story. All right, she comes from Ireland.
Yeah.
She's a fiery redhead. She's supposed to be absolutely beautiful, a beautiful woman. But when she was a baby, her birth was questionable. Her father was married to a wealthy woman, but he had an affair with the housemaid. And so Anne is the daughter of this affair. And of course, the father's wife knew that wasn't her child. And so they were expelled. They were all sent away. They go to the Carolinas, and for part of the time, Anne is passed off as a boy. She's passed off as a boy because that would be easier and more convenient for whatever reason, and so she becomes kind of adapt to changing gender. It's also in her favor because as a beautiful young woman, being tough was important. She's in a new settlement, it's rough, and she was pursued, and there's a story, couple of stories about how she would fight these pursuers if they were too aggressive, and she nearly beat one of these guys to death. So she was a tough cookie. All right, now while she's there dealing with all of that, she meets a really handsome man named James Bonny. He's a pirate. And because he's a pirate, her father disapproves, and there's no surefire way to get somebody to do what you don't want them to do if you disapprove.
Yeah.
So they got married anyways, and they take off to the Bahamas. That makes sense. All right, so they're off to of course, but the Bahamas are not the Bahamas we think of today at that time. They're there for what? Piracy. Yes, they're going to be pirates.
Yeah.
All right, except James does something terrible. He goes against the pirate code,
Oh.
and he starts working for the government, and what is he doing? He's turning in fellow pirates.
Oh.
All right? So Anne, she's very loyal to the pirate code, and so she wants to leave him. He won't give her a divorce. While they're down there, she meets Calico Jack.
Oh, boy, no.
She meets Calico Jack, they fall in love. Jack actually does something admirable for a pirate. He goes to James Bonny and he says, I will pay you. I'll pay you. He's going to make a financial purchase of Anne.
Yeah.
But so he would give her a divorce, and he refused. When really, normally what would happen is they'd just shoot him, they'd just kill him. But he did that. Well, anyways, James refused to do that, so what Anne does is she takes off with Calico Jack on his ship, but because she's going on his ship of men, what does she have to do?
She dresses in man.
Yeah, she's going to dress in very loose clothing, but she is, it said, was an excellent fighter. She fought side by side with him. She didn't shy away. She fought to the bitter end, and she was excellent. She was excellent with the pistol. She was excellent with a machete. She carried a pistol and a machete. All right, and so there's a statue of the two of them. That's Anne and Calico Jack fighting side by side. Well, of course, you know, they're on their honeymoon, so eventually she gets pregnant. And he drops her off in Cuba. He drops her off in Cuba, where she has the baby. She has a boy, she has a little boy, and she wants to get right back. So she gets word to him. He comes back to pick her up. She's made arrangements for the child. She gets back on board ship, but when she gets back on board, there's some new crew members. There are some new crew members there, and there's one that is really odd. There's one guy there. His name's Mark Reed, and he's just off. Something's off about him. So Anne finally discovers that Mark Reed is really Mary Reed, all right? And she too has a really remarkable story. Her mother is married to a sailor. The mother and the sailor had a baby boy. While the sailor's out to sea, he dies, and subsequently the boy dies. But she's also pregnant. Now, the husband's family has money, and the family is sending her money to support the boy. So all she has to do is keep the boy's death a secret and then pass off the next child as the deceased husband's child in order to survive. Well, the next child was a girl. So the mother, and this is to survive, tough times, the mother dresses her as a boy. She's being raised as a boy, and she's calling her Mark instead of Mary so that she would answer to Mark. And then ultimately, you know, she couldn't pull this off for too long. The family found out and they cut off the funds. So now Mary and her mother are destitute. Mary goes back to dressing as a boy, and she's doing these jobs that they have young men doing. This is called a powder monkey. Do you know what a powder monkey is?
Yeah, they take a gunpowder to the different ships.
Yep. They carry gunpowder to the different ships to make sure that the cannons are, that everybody's always
Ready.
supplied and ready. It's a very dangerous job. She then joins the British Army. And while she's there, she falls in love with a fellow soldier. They get married. All right, they get married. I guess she reveals her secret to him. They get married, and when their tour is up, they want to get out of this life. They want to get out of this life and settle down. So they buy a little tavern. It's called the Three Horseshoes. It's in the Netherlands. And it's still brewing beer to this very day. It still exists to this very day.
Really?
Yes. But unfortunately, when Mary and her husband try to settle down and have this tavern, her husband dies, and it doesn't say what he died from, but that he dies, and now she's a woman alone. So what does she fall back on?
She's gonna go back to being a big man.
She goes back to being a man. She finds a ship that she can go pirating on. Guess whose ship she joins?
Calico.
Yeah, Calico Jack. And that is how Mary Read and Anne Bonny meet one another. They're both on Calico Jack's ship, and they become the best of friends. And now they are the two that are fighting side by side and fighting more fiercely and ferociously than any of the men. And they're going to fight to the bitter end. In fact, that's exactly what happens when they are being pursued by the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy comes up to them. At first, Calico Jack makes an attempt to fight against them, but he can see he's overpowered, so he gives up. But Anne and Mary refuse. They won't. They're fighting by themselves. They're fighting by themselves. None of the crew will help them. And so ultimately they are arrested. The whole crew's arrested. And when they're brought to shore, everybody is tried. Yes, and then the penalty is hanging, except for these two ladies. Well, they had a defense. Guess what their defense was?
They were pregnant.
They were pregnant.
They were both pregnant. They were both pregnant. Yes, it's called pleading the belly. That's the name of it, yeah. So they did that, and sadly, Mary died in prison, and there is no record of a child. So it's assumed that the child also died. But as far as Anne, we don't know what happened to her.
Nobody knows?
Nobody knows. No, there's nothing but speculation. And the speculation is that she probably redefined herself, came up with another disguise, sailed off
Into the sun.
again, and had some other fabulous life, but she never revealed herself. But there is absolutely no record of what happened to Anne Bonny after her arrest
Or
in
her child?
prison, or her child.
And Calico Jack and the rest of them are home?
They were hung. They were hung.
Yeah.
And she had one parting shot for Calico Jack.
What?
Anne did. So she's walking by him as they're all being arrested, and she said to him, "If you fought like a man, if you had fought like a man, none of us would be in this situation." And those were the last words he ever heard from the woman that he loved.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, all right. So somehow I made that. Oh my. And it's not too terrible.
No.
All right, so next week we're going to talk about, we have some odds and ends to wrap up here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I haven't told you anything about Davy Jones' locker. All right, I haven't told you about, yeah, all the legends and where did Treasure Island come from, and buried treasure and all of that kind of thing, and the ghost ships and the sea creatures, and there's more to talk about. All right, so next week we're going to tie up all the loose ends, and we will wrap up our series on pirates. All right, thank you for staying. I appreciate that, and thank you very much for coming today.